Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of The Bills Guys, presented by the Buffalo Fanatics Podcasting Network. My name is Steve Mathis, and you can find me on Twitter at JudgeMathes, and I am joined by my co-host, Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at TiltMoney. Dave, I know you know me. I'm a pretty blunt guy, so I'm just going to address the elephant in the room right now. I am not Rico, and you are not Pierre. They are not here. We are not the faces that you are used to seeing on these live shows on YouTube and Facebook and Periscope. We are the Bills Guys, and we have been hosting a podcast here for the Buffalo Fanatics Podcasting Network for I don't know, about a half a year now, since just
almost
before the regular season last year, correctly?
Almost a year. I think we joined up in July last year, and so yeah, we're coming up on almost a year with the Fanatics. Joined them last year, kind of made a nice arrangement there to kind of be their headlining podcast, and now we're doing this new thing. So I'm excited about it, and Fanatics has been great. So thank you to Pierre and Rico and Bobby for giving us this chance.
Yeah, I mean, believe it or not, this is actually a milestone for us. Even though it's our first video podcast, it is also our 100th episode. So we've been doing this since January of last year. We got started over a year and a half ago, January of last year. So this is actually our 100th episode, believe it or not. I can't believe we've been doing this. How I don't have gray hairs yet, I have no idea. But a couple of shows that we did were to like 19 listeners. I already see from the graphic, we have 60 some odd viewers, which is like 3 times as many listeners as we had for our first podcast, which is just absolutely, crazy to me. So the first thing I want to say is, super thankful to the guys at Buffalo Fanatics, Rico, Pierre, Bobby. Like, you guys are an entity, and we are just thankful that you guys are having us, along for the ride here on the Buffalo Fanatics Podcasting Network. I'm so used to saying that, but I guess it's not really a podcast anymore. But before we get into that debate of what to call this show, because I don't know if we can call it a podcast anymore, why don't you explain to the people watching what is so unique and different maybe about our show, even though we've done 100 episodes already?
So we've done 100 episodes in under a year and a half. So if you think about that, that's a lot of shows. And the people that have been listening to us for a long time, know this backstory, but a lot of people probably don't know this backstory. So Steve lives in Arizona. I live in North Carolina. We, by happenstance, happen to essentially both raise our hands to be volunteers to do a Bills podcast for another network about a year and a half ago. So by happenstance, we got kind of paired up. 3,000 miles apart. We've never met each other in person. We've been doing this show now, podcast, now this video thing and we've still never met each other in person. We had plans to go to the draft together this year. Obviously that got canceled, and the day still has not come yet where we've met each other in person, but that day will come. And Steve and I, the dynamic we have when we're doing our shows is all been organically grown through email, text, just talking to each other, and it's pretty. I think it's pretty good considering we've never met.
Kevin Ray on Facebook. I agree with you. We are we are the Bills guys, and we do talk about the Bills a little bit. We wanted to introduce ourselves a little bit to start the show. So I promise you, we are going to get to the Ed Oliver news in a moment. And our topic of today is all about wide receivers. So we're going to talk about wide receivers today a lot. And that's I posted the video today, Duke Williams versus Isaiah Hodgins. And I mean, the videos, the article, it blew up. This is a hotly contested debate. And we're going to have that on the show today, and we're going to bring you guys in too. But first, here's the real hot button question is, this is typically a podcast. Like, my mother told me that, I have a face for radio. So I'm already overcoming so many obstacles.
You got great hair,
on this show right now. But what do we call it? Do we call it a vodcast, or do we call it a vidcast? I want the viewers' help here. Comment with what you think. Should this be the Bills Guys vodcast, or should this be the Bills Guys vidcast? I really want to know what you guys think about what we should call this show, while we sort of continue to explain the show a little bit. This show is going to be very friendly, obviously visually pleasing to the people watching it on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. We have the nice fancy graphics. We got the Buffalo Fanatics backdrops. We have our beautiful faces. We have all of these things. It's very visually pleasing. We're still going to be the same old Bills guys. If you are one of those people tuning in that listen to us on our podcast, that the people who listen to us, the people who have been with us since early on or joined us since we joined Fanatics, we are still going to do our best on a daily basis to make this an audibly pleasing podcast as well. So anytime there's a graphic on the screen, we're also going to relay it, audibly, as well as that fancy, nice graphic on the screen. Because, I think in our hearts, we are truly podcasters who are just, doing this video thing. Hopefully we'll get the hang of it and get better at it. Maybe we will become video people, but this show will still air next day on the Buffalo Fanatics Podcasting Network. So instead of Mondays, it's now going to be Tuesday, Fridays. So for those of you who prefer to listen to us audibly, for those of you who turned on, it was like, wow, I can't stare at these people's faces for an hour. Can't handle it. Can't do it. If you just want to listen to us, the dulcet sounds of our voices, you can still catch us on the Buffalo Fanatics Podcasting Network. So that as well. So, and along with so many other great podcasts on the network, the Overreaction podcast with Joe Miller, Buff City, the new podcast with Casey Reed, the NFL Basement with Adam Anini and Nate Asper, and obviously Bills Overdue, which is hilarious, with Jeremy and Max. So there's so many good podcasts on the network. Check out more than just us. It's well worth the listens.
And it seems like right now the early favorite is Vidcast, is what I'm seeing. I also saw a comment in there, Podeo or something like that. I've never heard of that, but that's pretty funny too. I guess. I think Vidcast does maybe.
I like that, like a rodeo.
Podio, it's like a video and a pod together. It's pretty good.
A Bills cast. I like that. Yeah. Eric Kinsey coming in clutch. Here, we have this fancy technology here. Look at that, Eric.
Nice.
All right. So, but it does. Tom comments from Facebook as well. The vids appear to have it. So let's jump into the first topic of the show here today. And obviously, first time on video, probably have a few more viewers than we normally have, but some sort of not so some nice news that we have to cover today. We have to talk about Ed Oliver and his arrest for a DWI. So for those of you who've been living under a rock, or for those of you who don't have the full details, Ed Oliver was arrested 2 nights ago in Houston, his hometown. DWI, he blew a .09. He was taken into custody because he also had a weapon in the car. Now, that weapon was legally owned by Ed Oliver. It's important to note that it was a legally registered firearm. The only problem is in the state of Texas, when you are committing another crime, which a DWI is, it's also a crime to be in possession of a weapon, whether it be a legal handgun or not. So sort of got doubled up there in terms of the sentence for Ed Oliver. I shouldn't even say sentence, the arrest for Ed Oliver. So what are your initial thoughts on Oliver, and what do you think about Bills Mafia's sort of reaction to the Ed Oliver news?
Well, to piggyback off of another show, I think a lot of the Bills Mafia, might have had the overreaction, right? So I think Jeremy and Max probably will cover that perfectly for their overreaction pod. But here's the thing, right? Mistakes are going to be made. This isn't the first time something like this is going to happen. This isn't going to be the last time. Did Oliver make a mistake? Yes. Is it the worst thing in the world? No. I don't think that it should be blown out of proportion necessarily. Do I think that McDermott will sit down and have a chat with him? Maybe, take a little bit of extra discipline on him in addition to whatever the league does? Perhaps, right? Is he going to treat him more like a rookie and say, like, look, that was like a rookie mistake, and this is what you have to do to kind of make up for it? We'll see. But I'm not getting too worked up about it right now. I do anticipate that there will probably be a suspension. The concern I have is those first 2 games of the season, when we play the Jets and the Dolphins, are very important division games early in the season. If he's suspended for 2 games or maybe even 3, those 2 games are hugely important. We know the Jets have Le'Veon Bell. Dolphins now with Matt Breida and Jordan Howard. We're going to need Ed Oliver's presence in the middle of that line those first 2 weeks. And if we can sneak by those 2 games without him, and again, I'm presuming a 2-game suspension, fine. But if we lose those games and we're not getting pressure up the middle from the defensive line and we suffer against the run, there's going to be some people who kind of look back in hindsight and say that was a bad move, and that may come back and cost us a potential playoff spot.
Yeah, I mean, Thad Brown, I believe he's with the ABC affiliate. I apologize if I got the network wrong, in Rochester. He did a great piece today where he examined sort of the history in the league and the history of the punishment for, what Ed Oliver has been accused of. And the thing that's different this year with Ed Oliver is it's a lot of people are saying 2 games, 2 games, 2 games. It's a little bit different this year because, because there's a new CBA. So the new CBA brings about some new rules. Roger Goodell is not the punishment czar anymore. All appeals go to Roger Goodell, but he no longer determines the punishment for Ed Oliver for what's going on right now. Now, in the past, you get arrested for the DWI or the DUI or whatever it is. You are punished just for being arrested. Even if the charges are eventually lowered or the charges are dropped, you are still punished by the National Football League for just being arrested in the first place. So with this new CBA, with a sort of not an independent arbiter, but a arbiter that's not Roger Goodell, maybe that sort of changes a little bit. Maybe the NFL waits now for the legal system to run its course before enacting a punishment. Maybe we don't see Ed Oliver suspended until halfway through the season. Or maybe we don't see Ed Oliver suspended until 2021 because maybe the legal system takes longer to play out, than it has. Like you see, he's already taken place in the virtual offseason. Court proceedings take a long, long time to figure themselves out sometimes. You have lawyers working on plea deals. You have them dumbing down sentences. You have all of these things. You have appeals and motions and all of these things. It's not like Ed Oliver is going to walk in and plead guilty. No one ever does that. Hardly ever do people do that. He might not even be punished in 2020 for all we know. So the last thing on my mind is a punishment for Ed Oliver. But I think that if we were to realistically and honestly think about a punishment, it's probably somewhere in the realm of 3 to 6 games. 6 being worst case scenario, I doubt it. 3 to 4 games. It's the gun thing that really makes you think, like, do they tack on a charge? As unfortunate as it is, because he wasn't really committing a crime with that gun. It was legally owned. Does the fact that there was a gun charge add additional time to that sentence? And, I want to preface my next thing by saying there's a lot of people on Twitter who are like, screw Ed Oliver. Like, what a jerk. What a selfish guy, putting people in harm's way. I'm not going to tell you shouldn't feel that way. Drinking and driving is not, I'm a teacher. If I was arrested for a crime like that, if I did something like that, what kind of example am I setting for my students? I think almost everyone, the 80 or so people who are listening and watching this right now, there's at least 6 degrees of separation. Have you ever seen that on with celebrities, like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon? Any celebrity, you can find 6 connections to Kevin Bacon. I'm pretty sure with the people watching right now, with the two of us, we can find 6 degrees of a connection to somebody whose life has been affected by a drunk driver. It's a serious thing. But you got to remember that Ed Oliver is 22 years old. He made a mistake. Thankfully, nobody was hurt. So now we take the next step. Nobody was hurt. If people were hurt, if people were harmed, we're having a different conversation. Nobody was hurt at this point, but Ed Oliver's reputation and his ego. So you got to think to yourself, Sean McDermott comes into Buffalo, Mr. Process. We talk about the process. Well, what is the process? The process is born out of something called growth mindset, which is a philosophy by an author and a sociologist named Carol Dweck. And part of the growth mindset is making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. So Ed Oliver has made a mistake. So he's coming to a really important point in his life and his career right now at 22 years old. Am I going to continue to make these mistakes? Am I going to continue to have these negative behaviors? Am I going to continue to make poor choices? Or am I going to learn from that? So the people who think, oh, Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane, Mr. Process, Mr. Culture, cut them loose, that's not going to happen. Because part of the process is making mistakes and learning from them. And at 22 years old, when I was 21, 22 years old, I was doing some dumb things. I'm sure you were. I'm sure most of the people watching were doing some dumb things that they're not proud of. Thankfully for us, it wasn't blasted all over social media and the news because we weren't celebrities. He made a huge mistake. And part of the growth mindset is learning from those mistakes and becoming a better person. That's part of the process. Sean McDermott said before the combine, you come to Buffalo to become a better version. When you come to Buffalo, you become the best version of yourself. That doesn't happen overnight. You don't snap your fingers and become the best version of yourself just because you're wearing Buffalo blue. It is a process and it takes time. And Ed Oliver is young. Hopefully he learns from this. Hopefully he doesn't pull a Sammy Watkins and continues a trend and doesn't see anything wrong with his negative behavior. Hopefully he gets on a camera in the next couple of weeks and sort of, gets in front of people and says, hey, look, I made a mistake. I'm going to learn from this. It's not going to happen again. And we don't have a Sammy Watkins situation, a Marshawn Lynch situation, a Marcel Darius situation where the negative behaviors and the negative actions continue and build upon each other. So I'm not too worried about it yet. I think you're right. Overreaction was the perfect word. I think people were really overreacting to it. I think the time of year really played into it. But let's take a quick second to talk about on the field. On the field, you mentioned weeks 1 and week 2 are really important. Say Ed Oliver does miss 3-4 games. Are you worried? Are you actually worried that he is missing time? Because it looks to me, by looking at the depth chart, like, he's a guy we could afford to lose for a game or two.
Yeah, I mean, we could afford to lose him, and I think that we do have the horses on the defensive line with the depth that we have now, with bringing in guys like a Vernon Butler. Obviously, we're expecting Harrison Phillips to be back. Starr is still there, but he's supposed to be that kind of difference maker, this up-and-coming difference maker on the line. So all it takes is one play in one of these games, sacking Sam Darnold, causing a fumble, something like that. Can other guys on the team do that? Sure. But he's the guy that you feel that you look at and say he has the most potential to make a play like that. So in these games where we think, hey, the Jets are going to be better this year, Darnold's going to be back, motivated, the Dolphins are going to be better. Like, one play could make a difference. I hope it doesn't come down to that. And if the team's good enough, it shouldn't matter. If the offense is good enough and the rest of the team is good enough, it should not matter that we're missing him for those 1 or 2 or whatever 3 games. But he is the one guy outside of maybe a Jerry Hughes right now on that line that can make a game-changing play, and all it takes is one. So that's the kind of thing, it's hard to project or predict something like that in any given game, but he's the guy that you expect to do that. So my level of concern is not very high at the moment, but you just wonder about, those types of plays that you're missing out on.
Yeah, I think Quentin Jefferson solves a lot of the problems here, because Quentin Jefferson he was the guy analytically who was right up there with Ed Oliver in terms of interior pressures. So he, I think, could kick inside and maybe stay inside full time and be that guy. You have AJ Epinesa, who's got the size and ability to kick inside on passing downs. If he's suspended early, I think that's actually in the Bills' favor, because the Bills have a guy by the name of Vincent Taylor, who I'm struggling to find a spot for on this roster, but he's still a pretty talented football player, Vincent Taylor. So if Ed Oliver is suspended early, you could just put Ed Oliver on the suspended list and keep Vincent Taylor on your roster for the first couple of weeks. And then when Ed Oliver comes back, you release Vincent Taylor. So you're not risking losing Vincent Taylor right off the bat. So if Ed Oliver gets suspended 6 weeks into the season, Vincent Taylor probably isn't going to make it to your practice squad, or he might have been picked up for your practice squad by then. So maybe the earlier suspension, the better. Speaking of overreactions, Joe Miller Wired with a great question here. It was reported that Oliver has voided his guaranteed money for 2020. Can you explain this? He still gets that money if he's on the team. What it means by he's got that guaranteed money void, it doesn't mean the Bills saved the $6.8 million, I believe it was. It means that the Bills did ever make the decision to cut him, they don't have to pay him that money. It's no longer a guaranteed bonus. It's just part of his salary. So, we talk about dead cap all the time. If we were to cut Trent Murphy right now, he's an $8-9 million cap hit, but he would only cost us, $2 million against the cap if we cut him, because that $2 million was guaranteed. The other $7 million was not. So Ed Oliver will still make that money. It's not like the Bills are saving money because of what happened. It's the Bills are no longer on the hook for that guaranteed money, which means if Ed Oliver's behavior continues to worsen, or he continues to make poor decisions, and the Bills decide like, hey, we need to cut this guy loose, it's not going to affect their salary cap to the total of that $6.8 million he was guaranteed. So a really expensive couple of beers for Ed Oliver if he continues to make these mistakes. But that's not something, people should be too concerned about. So that brings us to our topic for today. Enough of Ed Oliver, enough of the bad news. Let's talk about the exciting stuff. And let's talk about the wide receiver group, because, is it just me, Dave, or was it 3 years ago? We were watching the Buffalo Bills, and it was Andre Holmes, and it was Jeremy Curley, and it was Kelvin Benjamin, and it was Zay Jones. Look at this depth chart now. I mean, I did a 53-man roster projection a couple of weeks ago on the Fanatics blog, and I got, flamed for a lot of my takes on who I was cutting, because I only kept 6. We have more than 6 NFL quality receivers on this roster. So let's take a look right now at the guys who are locks to make this roster. The guys who are just straight up, they are here. There's no doubt about it. Let's start with the big 3, Stephon Diggs, John Brown, Cole Beasley. What are your thoughts on the impact these big 3 guys will have in 2020?
Well, here's the thing. I think that you take a look at what John Brown did last year, right? Career season for him. Him and Beasley were obviously the main two targets last year. John Brown did a lot, probably more from an efficiency standpoint than I think people were thinking. Like, I think a lot of people were thinking that he was going to come in and kind of be this deep threat type of guy. We had kind of said before the season started that he was a pretty complete route runner, and that he did show that last year. So to me, John Brown, from an efficiency standpoint, he's going to keep that up. I don't know that he's going to be able to replicate the same numbers that he had last year from a yardage standpoint or even a reception standpoint now with Stephon Diggs in the mix, because if you think about how Josh Allen distributed the ball last year, it was predominantly John Brown and Cole Beasley as kind of the number two guy. Didn't see pretty much any of Robert Foster. It was Dawson Knox here and there, right? So you talk about John Brown and Cole Beasley as being kind of the beneficiaries last year. Now you bring in a guy like Stephon Diggs, who you went and traded a first-round pick for. There's going to be a concerted effort to get him in the mix, and I think he can do a lot of the things that maybe people were expecting John Brown to do, stretch the field a bit. I mean, you look at this group now, there's not necessarily a guy with like super straight line 4-2, 4-3 Tyreek Hill type person, but you've got guys that can stretch the field on the outside now with Diggs and Brown. So I look at it as Diggs is going to maybe be that guy now that becomes the more of the deep threat, like tracking the ball over the shoulder type of guy, which we saw him do a little bit when he got on a roll with Kirk Cousins last year. I don't think John Brown's role should change a whole lot, to be honest with you. I think he was super efficient with those deep curls, those deep ins, those intermediate routes. He was great at those. And yes, we did hit a couple big ones with him, obviously the one in the New England game late, but I would not expect that same type of production from him this year from a statistical standpoint. I think that's going to be distributed now between those big three. Now, the one thing that you can think about here is that, and we talked about this from a philosophy standpoint, the Bills want to be that team, I think, that runs the ball about as much as they pass the ball. But are they going to evolve the offense this year now that they have really a bona fide top three group of receivers with Diggs, Beasley, Brown, where they're actually going to pass the ball a little bit more this year? And we see maybe two guys get close to 1,000 yards on this team. That remains to be seen, but they certainly have the capability to do so with the group they have now.
Yeah, no, I'm totally in agreement with you, because I'll tell you what, like when Sean McDermott first came here, that defensive-minded coach, the grit, the football guy sort of mentality, I was expecting, brought in Chris Ivory right away. I was expecting like run. Like, what was it? His first free agent signing was Patrick DeMarco, and he gave him a ton of money. Yeah. So, like, my first initial thoughts of Sean McDermott was like, all right, this is going to be ground and pound. This is going to be that sort of old school Buffalo Bills football. But, you saw the Buffalo Bills, even to as much as I am enlightened and would like to see a modern day offense. I was even criticizing the Bills for maybe throwing the ball a little bit too much last year. I think Stephon Diggs solves all of those problems. As you're saying, like, I was expecting the Bills to go out this offseason and sign a guy and draft a guy at running back. They only drafted a guy. I mean, they signed Tywan Jones, but he's not really a running back. He's a special teamer. I think this offense is ready to evolve into an offense that throws the ball 35 to 40 times a game and do it consistently. I believe that the Buffalo Bills are going to go out there this season and say, Josh Allen, you're either our guy or you're not. You're going to chuck that rock. We're not going to baby you. We're not going to Ryan Tannehill you. We're not going to hold you back. We're giving you John Brown and Stephon Diggs on the outside, and we are giving you Cole Beasley over the middle, and we are giving you Devin Singletary, and we are giving you Zach Moss to run the football, and an above-average offensive line.
And Dawson Knox is still there as well as an X factor potentially.
Evolving as well. So, yeah. I mean, let's just take a second to talk about Stephon Diggs for a second, because like he's honestly like a cure-all. Like I hate to say it because he's just one guy, but he's a silver bullet. This is one of the top 5-10 best receivers in the National Football League, and he can literally do just about anything. He's got the long ball. He got the speed down the field. He can track the football. His short game is yards after catch. He can do all of those things in the short route, intermediate. He's one of the elite route runners in the game. And you pair him on the outside with John Brown and the speed that John Brown has. I think you're going to see John Brown get fewer targets this year, but you're going to see his yards per catch go up. Stephon Diggs, I think it's going to be interesting to see if Josh Allen can force feed, Stephon Diggs the ball. I have questions about whether Josh Allen can be that guy, but if he can be that guy and you got Diggs and you got Brown on the outside, those corners. I remember in the preseason last year, we didn't see it so much in the regular season because Josh Allen's Deep ball wasn't the greatest last year. That's something he needs to improve on. But in the preseason, when people still feared that Josh Allen deep ball a little bit, remember those plays, and you mentioned it a little bit, John Brown, he would run down the field and the corner would be backpedaling, and that corner was giving John Brown, those corners were giving John Brown all kinds of respect. And when John Brown ran and he decided to fake the deep route and run that curl, Josh Allen's got an arm like maybe 3 or 4 guys in the league. He can make that bullet to a sideline throw. So, and that was a deadly, unstoppable combination in the preseason. We didn't see it so much in the regular season, but now with Stephon Diggs on the other side, it's going to open up less double coverage for John Brown, maybe open up some more plays down the field, maybe open up some more plays on those curls and in the intermediate. John Brown is more than just a deep ball guy. But what excites me the most is when you have these 2 guys in the middle, it gets the safeties thinking. Those safeties, both of them, are going to be like, wow, all pro receiver on one side, speed guy who can do a hell of a lot more on the other side, and John Brown. That's going to open things up for the guy that was honestly had probably the best chemistry with Josh Allen last year, Cole Beasley. I mean, let's talk about Cole Beasley for a second. Cole Beasley is the biggest winner here. I think he might be the most targeted receiver on the Bills roster next season. I'm not even kidding, because you saw the connection that those two were making. You saw the plays that they were making over the middle of the field. Those safeties are creeping on the outside to worry about those 2 speedy guys on the outside. That's going to open up a whole heck of a lot over the middle of the field. That can be running the ball down people's throats. That can be Dawson Knox. That could be a number of things. But number one in my mind is Cole Beasley. This guy is going to rack it up this season because, I mean, he's just such a crisp precision route runner. Like I said, he's got that chemistry with Allen. I can't believe some of the things he did last year when he was the number 2 target. Safeties were looking for him. People were putting their number 2 corner on him. There was no other threat on the outside opposite John Brown. Robert Foster was a decoy. Isaiah McKenzie was too small to do anything on the outside. There was nothing on the outside across from John Brown. Yet John Brown still produced on the outside, and Cole Beasley still had a pretty decent year. A pretty decent year from the slot. Now imagine that with an all-pro on the other side, taking on double coverages, being the alpha. You now have these 2 other guys who are going to be in a position to eat. And I'm really looking forward. Like I said, I think John Brown's targets will be down, but his yards per catch will be up. I think he'll make bigger plays. Again, a little bit dependent on Josh Allen's ability to hit the deep ball. And I think Cole Beasley's targets are going to skyrocket because, Josh Allen ain't no Tyrod Taylor. He'll throw the ball over the middle of the field, and Cole Beasley gets open over the middle of the field. So I'm really looking forward to these big 3. And maybe I'm too excited. Am I too excited?
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing I want to see with Beasley, right? Okay, this is what I want to see with Beasley. And I mean, some of the plays that stand out, obviously, last year, the touchdown Josh Allen threw to Beasley in the Dallas game, the touchdown he threw to Beasley in the Denver game, right? These are these plays where he's running routes across the middle of the field and he's got room to work after the catch. This is what I want to see more of from Cole Beasley in 2020. I want to see, and it's going to be relying on Josh Allen too, so don't get me wrong here. With those safeties creeping back, with the attention that the deep third of the field is going to get from Brown and from Diggs, what I want to see is I want to see Josh Allen be able to hit Cole Beasley on some of these quick inside twitchy type routes where he's going to have an opportunity for some yards after the catch that maybe he didn't have last year. And I'm not saying he didn't all the time, but there were a lot of cases where he's catching the ball and going down, which is fine. And a lot of times, 3rd downs, you want to convert, fine. But I think that there's a real opportunity here for Cole Beasley now in 2020 to just yak it up, man. Like we saw it a couple times last year, but if Josh Allen can, hit him in stride, safeties are now back. Maybe they're, playing cover 2 and they're in the deep quarters of the field. Now all of a sudden, maybe Cole Beasley and Dawson Knox have some of that room to work over the middle to get more after the catch than they did last year. And that's, I think, to me, going to be a little bit more of the X factor in the middle of the field. I do think you're right. Cole Beasley probably is the biggest benefactor to this Diggs move. And so I would like to see more of that, I guess, is more yards after the catch from those guys over the middle.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about our 4th-round pick, Gabriel Davis, whatever you want to call him, from the University of Central Florida. 6'3", 220 pounds, despite his size. This is not a guy who's going to come in and I think compete with Duke Williams and be that sort of big slot that everybody is suspecting him to be. That's not Gabriel Davis's thing. Gabriel Davis is coming in here to sort of replace the Robert Fosters of the world. He's a bigger, bulkier, version of Robert Foster. Now, Robert Foster is a little more bendy, twitchy, athletic. He can run those jet sweeps. Gabe Davis is really stiff. So he's not going to be doing those things in the short to intermediate that maybe a Robert Foster was capable of. But down the field, he's going to be able to replicate what Robert Foster did his rookie season and probably then some. Again, dependent on Josh Allen and the deep ball. But Gabriel Davis is a lock based on the draft capital. Based on his draft capital spent on him, he's a lock. It's not a question in anyone's mind, I don't think. The question, I think, is dependent on Josh Allen, because Gabe Davis is a guy who's really good down the field. What do you expect out of Gabriel Davis in year one? Like, what's his role in the offense going to be outside of these big three?
Yeah, his role is going to be as a straight line guy on the outside to spell, a Diggs or a Brown. He's going to have to contribute on special teams. He's going to have to be a gunner or something on special teams. Maybe he's going to be, a guy that you put in at the end of the half, maybe to throw a deep ball up to. I don't expect him to be super elaborate route runner in year one, because that's not what he is, right? He's a strider. He's a straight line guy. And there is a role for that on this team. However, I think that we need to temper expectations a bit in year one. If we can see him contribute on special teams, if we can see him improve his route tree, learning from guys like Diggs and Brown, right? Develop more, more of a complete route tree package, and see maybe later in the season him come in and help out a little bit. Then that's, to me, something that we should be thinking about for him this year. I think that, again, he's a 4th round pick. He's got potential. He obviously improved every year he was at UCF. So there is potential there, and you love his size and you love his ability to track the ball. But again, we didn't see a ton of that last year from Josh Allen. So it's going to depend on kind of what this offense is going to evolve into as to how much he's actually going to contribute from a receiving standpoint.
Yeah. For Gabe Davis, his 2020 is completely dependent on Josh Allen, because he is a one-trick pony. He is a vertical guy, a guy who he's not exactly a burner. He's got speed for his size.
It's like a 4.5.
4.40. But he's really good at stacking his routes down the field. He's really good at tracking the ball. He's really good at high pointing the football, getting down the field. He did some things down the field at the University of Central Florida that got the Buffalo Bills excited. And if Josh Allen can sort of develop that deep ball, and I'm confident he can, because Josh Allen was not a great intermediate thrower. And then all of a sudden last season, that's the best part of his game after an off season. So now he's got another off season. And what's probably at the top of Josh Allen's list after not fumbling, because we don't want to see him fumble it no more, is throwing that deep ball, because that deep ball opens so much underneath. And Gabriel Davis is going to be a huge component in that. You mentioned him on the outside. My excitement with Gabriel Davis is sort of what I talked about in pods way back in the pre-draft process about why I love Michael Pittman so much. That's slots that's vertical shots from the slot. If you line up Diggs and you line up Brown on the outside and you put Gabriel Davis as a third wide receiver in a formation, put all 3 guys on one side of the football field. Where are those safeties' attentions going? The safeties' attentions are going to be on John Brown and Stephon Diggs. So you're going to get Gabe Davis in the slot down the field, matched up on a tiny nickel corner, matched up on a safety. You're going to have, advantages down the field with Gabriel Davis, one-on-ones with Gabriel Davis. It's then going to be on Josh Allen to get the ball in a position where he can catch it. It's going to be about Josh Allen putting the ball where it needs to be for Gabe Davis to be successful. But Gabe Davis is going to open up a hell of a lot. And once Gabe Davis starts having success, then the safeties have to start worrying about Gabe Davis. It opens up stuff in the intermediate for John Brown and Stephon Diggs. Like it all builds on top of each other. The more weapons you have, there's only one football. But the more weapons you have, the more it allows you to do because of the threats and the way the threats make the defense think. So Gabriel Davis, what really excites me, even though he's a one-trick pony right now, is his ability to run deep routes inside while Brown and Diggs are still on the field. Now, you mentioned special teams, playing special teams early. If Gabriel Davis doesn't come in and soak up, learn new workout routines from Stephon Diggs, who's a workout warrior, learn things about the nuances of route running from Diggs and Brown and Beasley. If he doesn't come in here and soak up these veterans like a sponge and then the knowledge they have to share with him, he's always going to be a one-trick pony. That's okay. But if he's going to be a one-trick pony, if this skill set of his down the field speed is down the field size / speed is all he has going for him and all he ever has going for him, he can still be a very good number 4 receiver, but he better learn how to play special teams. He better learn how to play special teams. There's no spot on your roster for a one-trick pony who can't play special teams. If he's going to end up being a niche player, which, hey, a 4th-round pick might end up being a niche player. There's nothing wrong with that. But he better turn himself into Marcus Beasley or Kamar Aiken. Was it Kamar Aiken or was it Sam Aiken or was it both? I don't know. One of those, both of them, maybe.
Sam Aiken, and like it's kind of the recent role that Andre Holmes played when he was here a couple years back, right? So
the guy better learn to go on tackle on special teams if he's not going to develop his underneath game as a wide receiver. Because if he doesn't develop a complete game as a wide receiver, there's no spot for him on the roster in 2, 3, 4 years. Not 2, 3, but 3, 4 years down the road. There's no second contract for him.
Right.
If he can't play special teams unless he develops and becomes a number 2 receiver, which there's upside for him to become a number 2 receiver. That's the exciting thing. Yes, he's a one-trick pony right now, but you mentioned he comes in, he soaks in that route running, that short to intermediate, the workout processes that, some other, some workouts that other receivers like Stephon Diggs do, changes his body a little bit, changes his game a little bit. He could become a number 2 receiver. Hell, he's got the size, the ability, the alpha mentality to be maybe a number 1. So you love the potential, you love the upside, but you also love what he gives you right away. But again, it's completely dependent on Josh Allen. I'm with you there. So that brings us to another guy. And that other guy is sort of something I think that Bills Mafia doesn't like to talk about. Because our comment section right now, I have seen the words Isaiah McKenzie. I have seen the words Duke Williams. I have seen the words Isaiah Hodgins. I have seen the words Robert Foster. Bills fans love the guys who make the plays on offense. We don't so much maybe notice a guy like Andre Roberts. While Andre Roberts was a Pro Bowl kick returner, albeit an alternate this year, serves a role. People want the flashier, the more substantive guys. So Andre Roberts, are you buying him as a roster lock? Do you think he's a roster lock for this football team, despite the fact that maybe a lot of people in this fan base aren't as high on him as they are on some other people?
I think he should be. I mean, I am going to buy that. And this is the reason why, right? The coaching staff trusts him back there. He's 1 year removed from being an all-pro returner, right? He's on a very affordable contract. This is his last year on a 2-year deal. It's only a $2 million cap hit for him this year. If you recall, at the beginning of last year, he missed the first couple games due to a quad injury. And even though he was back after that, you could kind of tell he wasn't 100% until more towards midway through the season. So for me, once he kind of came back and it seemed like he took a few games to kind of get back into it, I really like the security he gave the Bills on both kick returns and punt returns. He's a smart guy. He knows his role there. He still finished 4th in the NFL in kick return yards in only 13 games. He's 5th in average. He was 8th in punt return yards, 10th in average there. So to me, this is a trust thing. It's a fit. It's a monetary, it's all of those things. And again, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of you've got Diggs, you've got Brown, you've got Beasley. How often, other than maybe like a few times a game, maybe end of half or maybe end of the game, are you really going to be running 4 and 5 wide receiver sets if you're going to take, maybe you're going to take Knox off the field? So to me, having Andre Roberts there at the bottom of your receiver depth chart, being that security blanket on special teams as a returner, and by the way, still being pretty productive last year statistically, to me, he's a lock to make this team, and the coaching staff trusts him back there more than they trust an Isaiah McKenzie type who's had his fumbling issues in the past. So for me, I am buying Andre Roberts as a roster lock as of now.
Yeah, I mean, Young King agrees with you. He says, Tilt Money speaking facts right now. I totally agree with you. And I think look no further. People are going to learn real quick that you're the stats guy. You are the man who can just list off numbers like that. I'm the guy who's sort of numbers scare me. I understand analytics. I don't know how to speak it. So I understand statistics. I don't know how to speak it. That's your job. So people are going to understand the dynamic real quick. You are the stats man, and you bring the stats every week. And Young King gets to see that firsthand, and then the rest of the people.
Thank you, Young King. Appreciate that. Thank you.
So, a couple other people mentioned, I think just, me with my very less nuanced opinion, watched games last year and saw that when Andre Roberts missed time, it wasn't Isaiah McKenzie back there returning kicks. It wasn't, because Isaiah McKenzie, like Ray McLeod before him, aren't very secure with the football. Right. Sean McDermott, in his heart of hearts, is, like we mentioned, a football guy, a field position guy. Ball security is important. How many times does he talk about protecting the football, protecting the rock, not turning the ball over? Even if Andre Roberts is a very good return man, he almost broke a couple last year, he's still going to get you 8-9 yards per return most of the time. He's going to be very safe about his fair catches. But when he was hurt last year, it was Micah Hyde back there. Micah Hyde is a glorified punt catcher.
And you don't want him back there. You don't want your star starting safety back there returning punts if you can help it.
Yeah, and you don't want to risk him to injury and all that stuff. So as much as I think fans might not want it because they dig some of these guys at the back half of the roster, I think we're gonna have to cross our fingers and hope some guys make it to the practice squad, because I think Andre Roberts is almost a lock to me to make this roster at this point. So that brings us to a little ad read. We got to pay the bills here. Before we hop into our next subject, which is going to be the back half of the wide receivers, all the things that have been filling up our comment section here, we're going to get to it. But first, I want to introduce you guys, the listeners, to the Flick Chat app. If you guys have not yet, when you're done watching this VOD, do we decide on vidcast?
Vidcast we'll go for. We'll go for now. Yeah.
When you're done with this vidcast, or you're done with this patio, whatever you want to call it, Bills cast. All right, head on over to the Flick Chat app. I mean, join us in the Buffalo Fanatics channel once you are on that Flick Chat app. This app is like the Bills message boards of old. So for those of you people listening, watching, if you were the people back in the day before this crazy cool technology like YouTube, who were on the Buffalo Bills message boards, it's like the Bills message boards of old. It is Instagram, Twitter, all of that rolled into one. You're not going there and sort of getting lost in like the memes and the TikToks and the politics. It's all Bills talk all the time on the Flick Chat app. Become a member of the Buffalo Fanatics community on there. There's giveaways galore. Rico, Pierre, Bobby, all of the sort of founders of the Buffalo Fanatics are there. It is well worth your time. So please do check out the Flick Chat app. Have we crossed the 1,000 threshold?
No, we're getting close. And the one other thing that's great about it is like you can set the custom notifications to like the main chat, or if there's a specific topic you want to get notified if someone's talking about it. You can set it up to say like, hey, notify me when someone makes a message in this chat, and then you can get it right on your phone, and you can kind of like customize that as well. So it's pretty sweet. It does remind me of the message boards of old, and people are pretty interactive on there. It's pretty fun. It's good. And then there's the specialty chats we do when it's things like draft time, or like the other night when we were rewatching the Bills Dallas game, we'll start up a chat just for that topic. So yeah, it's really cool. I like it.
Yeah, chat with bf.com, Flick Chat. For those of you who are commenting and all these things, like this is the first time I've had to work the board. So working the board and talking is a struggle for me. I'm getting the hang of it. But chat with bf.com, that is how you get onto the Flick Chat community. So that brings us to our next topic, which is I think something that the people in the mentions are going to start blowing up the comments here, because our next comment is this: buy or sell. This is a pretty hotly contested question, or a poll that I put out on the Bills Guys Twitter handle. Here, look, I'm learning. The Bills Guys Twitter handle. So if you want to follow us over here on @theBillsGuys, that is our podcast or vidcast or Billscast handle. This was a very hotly debated poll that we put up a couple of weeks ago. Buy or sell? Are the Buffalo Bills going to carry 7 wide receivers this year? Because you got to think to yourself, the rosters have technically expanded to 55, but not really, because those 2 extra players, they're practice squad call-ups that you can call up at least twice without the risk of losing them. So really, it's still a 53-man roster, but you can have up to 55 players. The active game day roster goes from 46 to 48. But one of those guys, the 47th guy, has to be an offensive lineman. So you have to carry at least 1 extra offensive lineman. I believe you have to carry a minimum of 8. The Buffalo Bills typically carry 7 with, the position flex of Spencer Long and Ryan Bates and Ty and Secchi, guys like that. The Bills were typically carrying 7. They have to carry 8 next year. So that accounts for one of those extra guys. But with all these new rules with the CBA about rosters, 55, but technically still 53, 48 on game day, really just 1 extra guy if you're not an offensive lineman. Buy or sell? Do the Bills still carry 7 wide receivers in 2020?
I'm going to sell on this. Give me the sell alarm. It kind of gets back to a point I made just a minute ago, right? They're going to be so reliant on the top 3 wide receivers, and plus the emergence, hopefully, of Dawson Knox this year. We also have to think about this from a roster construction standpoint. The Bills, they've seemingly loved the tight ends, right? You still got Lee Smith, you got Dawson Knox, you got Tommy Sweeney, you still got Jason Kroom in there. So you got Tyler Kroft, right? So to me, if you think about the roster construction, I just don't see a path to carrying 7 wide receivers. To me, if it's a roster construction question, I'm going to carry an extra defensive lineman for a rotation there. I just don't really see the value there. Like the Bills are going to keep, at the bottom of their wide receiver depth chart, wide receivers that can play special teams or fill like a niche role. But once you get down to like that 6th, 7th guy, I mean, at that point, it's like he's probably going to be a practice squad caliber type of player anyway. I just don't see the Bills carrying 7 with the fact that, they've got this kind of large tight end room and the depth, honestly, which seems a little bit unrelated, but actually could be that defensive line and possibly rotating an extra guy in there on the defensive line every week. So I'm going to sell. I don't think they're keeping 7.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna sell as well. I think the situation I think you're gonna find yourself in is I think the Bills will keep 2, maybe even 3 guys on the practice squad, and it's sort of gonna be like a matchup type of thing where if Isaiah Hodgins makes the roster, I think they try to maybe slide Duke Williams onto the practice squad. If Isaiah McKenzie, makes the roster, Robert Foster still has practice squad eligibility, believe it or not. He's only got 2 acquired seasons. You can have guys on your practice squad with less than 3 acquired seasons. He's only got 2. So Robert Foster's still practice squad eligible. And the season he had last year, maybe you could slip Robert Foster on to the practice squad. So I think from, as you mentioned, a roster construction standpoint, you're going to see 6 wide receivers because you look at names like Patrick DeMarco, Lee Smith, TJ Yeldon, Tywan Jones, they all have roles. There's only one football. There's only so many wide receivers you're going to put on the football field. You love to have Isaiah McKenzie. You love to have that gadget guy. You love to have Isaiah McKenzie and Duke Williams, 2 size guys. But at what cost? Lee Smith blocks, Patrick DeMarco blocks. They play a certain role. Whereas wide receivers, the role could be much smaller. Now, someone did say, let me find it on the chats here. Sean Munley said, hopefully they carry 7 and move on from DeMarco. I don't picture the Bills moving on from DeMarco because I think, especially in the winter years on the goal line, on 3rd and shorts, I think I don't picture it unless we get to training camp and see them cross-training a Tommy Sweeney. I don't picture them cutting a Patrick DeMarco. But Redbeard315 makes a great comment. He says, Cutley Smith, you're welcome.
Yes.
Now, if Tommy Sweeney shows up to training camp and improve, like he's already a decent run blocker. I mean, Lee Smith said last training camp, my job is to make Tommy Sweeney the next Lee Smith. And so if Tommy Sweeney can take to that mentoring, if Tommy Sweeney can become a run blocker and a guy that the Buffalo Bills feel comfortable with on the football field, between Knox and Sweeney and DeMarco and Croft not so much, but he's still a so-so blocker. You have some decent run blockers you can put on the edge. Ty Nsekhe, if he doesn't win the starting job, is a very fluid guy that you could throw at the end of the line as a 6th offensive lineman. Like there are things you could do from a game day roster standpoint to cut a Lee Smith. And if you cut a Lee Smith, maybe Duke Williams can play like a hybrid role. You know what I'm saying? Like, so maybe slide Duke Williams in to a tight end, play like a Trey Burton type of role. So those are some things that we could.
Let's get Redbeard's other comment up there. His last comment. That's a good one. Hopefully, no, the Young King's right about that, but let's get the Redbeard 315 comment from right before that. He there you go. That's a good one right there. That's facts. I agree, Young King. Facts indeed.
Lee is literally
nobody wants to be the next Lee Smith. That's great.
So yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, this season he did get that reputation, but before that, Lee Smith has been in this league a long time between the Patriots, the Raiders, and the Bills. And there has been a reason for that. As much as we want to make fun of Lee Smith, he is one of the premier run blocking tight ends in the National Football League, or at least he was, and that's how he's made his reputation in this league. So if Tommy Sweeney can do it without the holding calls and maybe chip in a little bit more in the receiving game, you got yourself a pretty good tight end, number 2 tight end for 5, 6, 7 years in Tommy Sweeney. So let's move on now to the next buy or sell. This one gets a little trickier. Now we're going to get more specific with it. So here we were buying or selling whether we're going to keep 7 receivers on the roster. Both you and I think it's sort of like a pipe dream. But say that our pipe dream becomes a reality and the Buffalo Bills do carry 7 wide receivers. Who are we taking? This or that? Isaiah McKenzie or Robert Foster as one of those 7 receivers? If the Buffalo Bills decide to keep that 7th receiver, is it Isaiah McKenzie or is it Robert Foster?
Man, this is tough. And as much as I really do like Robert Foster, I think it's Isaiah McKenzie. And the reason for that is because we've already talked about Gabe Davis kind of being the potentially redundant skill set to a Robert Foster, right? We have guys that can do the things that Robert Foster does. Isaiah McKenzie did show some flashes of big play potential last year. Isaiah McKenzie comes off to me as a guy who really, really loves football, wants to be in this league. He's a motivated guy, seems driven. He seems hungrier than Foster. And he provides you a little bit more of a unique and niche skill set that if you did carry that seventh wide receiver, he can be a little bit more of a gadget type player than a Foster. I do think that, the fact that we drafted Gabe Davis in the 4th round is not necessarily a good omen for Robert Foster. And we're going to get to Hodgins later, but I just don't see a path for Robert Foster making, being on the field unless it's specifically some of the plays like we saw him do last year and some of those end arounds, when he was actually healthy and in the game. But I do think McKenzie can do that for you too. And he did that more consistently last year. So for me, I'll say McKenzie. It hurts me a little bit because I do like Robert Foster, but I'll say McKenzie. And in a pinch, McKenzie can offer help in the return game if needed.
Yeah, I Redbeard's on fire today. He says McKenzie, great speed for jet sweeps. Isaiah even had some clutch snags last season too. Josh Allen, throughout his career, in his 2 years here, has seemed extremely comfortable and has a little bit of a chemistry with Isaiah McKenzie. I said this on a couple of podcasts last season when we were talking about the bottom half of the roster, where Isaiah McKenzie is always going to have sort of a soft spot, at least in my heart, because this Buffalo offense was just brutal 2 years ago. I mean, we had one of the worst rosters I can ever remember as a Bills fan. And, I lived through the Sean Bryson, Jonathan Linton years, Jeremy McDaniel years, Breon Hill years. Those are some of the players that I grew up, my young fandom watching. And we had a roster that was arguably worse than that Josh Allen's rookie year. It was terrible. And Isaiah McKenzie came from the Denver Broncos practice squad, and he was a breath of fresh air. He injected a little bit of life into this offense, and I will always be forever grateful to Isaiah McKenzie for that. But the question you have to ask yourself is this. One, I think Isaiah McKenzie would have the edge here because of Tywan Jones. Tywan Jones offers – Sonoris Perry wasn't a gunner. Tywan Jones is a gunner. Robert Foster was a gunner last year. No other wide receiver on this team could replicate Robert Foster's ability to play a gunner. Whether we as fans want to talk about gunners or not, it's important to Sean McDermott. It's important to the Buffalo Bills. So special teams is something that's important to them. So if Tywan Jones can't cut it as a gunner, that's Robert Foster's path to this roster because he did pretty well as a gunner last season. The Bills depended on him, on things like punts. So that's where Robert Foster had the edge. I think it'll be a legitimate competition. Before Isaiah McKenzie got here, Robert Foster did do those jet sweeps. He does have that speed. He does have that ability. I don't think he's as good with the ball in his hands as Isaiah McKenzie is. Clearly, Isaiah McKenzie's made the bigger plays in his career. But at the same time, Robert Foster has those abilities as well. Who knows? Maybe, with Stephon Diggs here, we start giving John Brown some of those responsibilities or Cole Beasley some of those responsibilities. Maybe we give some of those other guys those responsibilities. So, I'm with you. I think it would be McKenzie, but I wouldn't rule out Robert Foster just yet. And remember, Robert Foster still has that practice squad eligibility. He was pretty invisible last year, so maybe a guy like Robert Foster, you could sneak him onto the practice squad and be one of those guys you call up and down, depending. Isaiah McKenzie's got 3 accrued seasons, so he's done. You cut Isaiah McKenzie, you can't get him on the practice squad. So Isaiah McKenzie's out of the running to be on the practice squad, which brings us to our next this or that. And this is the one that's got everybody up in arms. I released a video on Twitter and YouTube today, released an article, my Monday feature, and it was all about Isaiah Hodgins versus Duke Williams. And this is going to be the talk of every podcast, the talk of Twitter, when and if training camp opens up, depending on what it looks like. If we get the access that we typically do to practices, this is going to be what Tyler Bass, Stephen Hauschka, Josh Norman, Levi Wallace, Isaiah Hodgins, Duke Williams. It is going to be the biggest talk of training camp, or one of the biggest talking points of training camp. So this or that, if the Buffalo Bills were to only keep one, is it Isaiah Hodgins, the rookie 6th-round pick, or is it Duke Williams, the promising young veteran?
Oh man, this is where
won over the hearts of a million. You honestly can't win here.
I can't. I can't win.
You're gonna anger at least half the people in the comments.
Probably more. I'm gonna anger a lot of people. Look, let me just first start talking about like what Duke Williams does bring to the table. Right, he's got the pro experience. He played last year. He made some good plays last year. He was targeted a bunch in the playoff game. He's an effort guy. He's a practice warrior. Right, he's good at blocking in the run game. He can run a decent amount of routes. He can go up and high pint the ball. He obviously. Had the trust of Josh Allen in that game. So he's got a lot of things going for him. But like for me, I'm going to take the guy at this stage who's got the higher ceiling, and I think that's Hodgins. And the reason I'm saying that is like you don't need to rely on Duke Williams maybe like you thought you needed to rely on him last year, right, as maybe like the third guy or as like the big target guy, right? We already know the Bills are going to keep Gabe Davis. He's a 4th-round pick, so he's going to be on the roster. So we have that bigger guy now. Like to me, I'm going to look at a guy like Hodgins, who I actually kind of like a little bit even more than Davis as a prospect. Seems like he has the potential to be a better, more complete route runner than a Williams. He's got amazing hands. He progressed every year that he was at Oregon State. He led his team in receiving at 13 touchdowns the senior year. To me, it's the ceiling that you're keeping when it comes to Hodgins. Duke Williams has shown that he can play in the NFL. He's shown that he can play in the CFL. But because the Bills don't necessarily absolutely need that guy that they like, okay, we know what we're going to get out of Duke Williams. We know we can count on him for, whatever these plays in a game. Now with Diggs in the mix and you drafted Gabe Davis, like, yes, I know it's a lot to put on rookies and having 2 rookies on the roster, but you've got those 3 veterans there to bring those guys along. So I'm going to take the guy with the higher ceiling here, and I'm going to go with Hodgins. I know I'm going to get flamed for that, so I'm already expecting it, but I just like Hodgins.
Yeah, I mean, this is this or that, so I just have to choose one. But I will say this, again, in Duke Williams' defense. If he would have played more last year, maybe this is a different conversation because he's more comfortable with Josh Allen. Maybe he makes that clutch catch in the Houston game that I don't want to say he dropped it because it was a contested catch situation. It was a 40-60 ball or whatever. But I mean, Josh Allen threw some nice balls. One especially that sticks out is in the end zone. But Duke Williams, his combine was one of the worst in like NFL history. It was terrible. But he went to the CFL. He resurrected some things. He had a very good rookie season. But at the end of the day, like he is just a CFL flyer. Isaiah Hodgins is a guy who was a 6th-round pick. He ran a 4.65 at the combine, which is probably the reason why the Buffalo Bills got him in the 6th round. Isaiah McKenzie, I'm going to keep screwing that up, but Isaiah Hodgins screams to me a guy where if there would have been a typical pre-draft process this year, if he would have gotten to go to his pro day and lower that 4.65 to a 4.55, or gotten to talk to scouts and got to work out for scouts and scouts got to see him at his pro day, I feel like he probably would have been higher than a 6th-round pick. Isaiah Hodgins screams to me a guy who might be a better pro than he was in college. One of those guys who outplays his draft position. I have a feeling about Duke Williams, and I like Duke Williams, and I wish nothing for the best but Duke Williams. But I mean, you put a gun in my head and tell me which guy's gonna have a better career. I'm picking Isaiah Hodgins. You're the stat guy, but I'm gonna give you some stats here, and I've been screaming these numbers till I was blue in the face since I first saw them. This is the analytic company Sports Information Solution. These are the stats that they compiled on Isaiah Hodgins, and they did it in a way that just really speaks to me. 29 targets in college in the red zone. 29. Of those 29 targets, 22 of the passes were catchable. So 22 of the 29 targets were on point. They were in a position where he could catch it. He caught 21 of them. Of those 21 catches, 16 were touchdowns. He had 0 drops, and he had 18 first downs, which tells me that they were counting touchdowns as first downs. So he legitimately, of his 21 catches, of the 22 catchable balls in the red zone, 18 of them were either for first downs or for touchdowns. 16 touchdowns. Like, those red zone statistics are insane. We aren't Duke haters. Chris C here. We're not Duke haters.
We don't hate him.
I like Duke Williams. I was the guy who not as many people who are watching this listened to our podcast last year, but like I was the guy screaming at the top of my lungs, put Duke Williams in the damn game because he provided a component to this offense that we did not have. But now there's another guy who provides that component that Duke Williams has. And I know we like Duke. I love Duke Williams. If Duke Williams turns into something, I'm going to be his biggest fan. But like I said, if you put a gun in my head and you're making me make this choice, if I'm an NFL general manager, I'm going with the guy we invested the draft capital in. I'm going with the guy who has those insane career numbers in college. 3 drops on 179 career targets. 16 of his 20 career touchdowns were in the red zone. You know, he's a crisp route runner. He's a student of the game. He talks about how he liked to watch Stephon Diggs game films the night before every game. He wasn't out partying. He wasn't out drinking. He was watching Stephon Diggs and other NFL wide receivers game tapes the night before every game. This is a guy I think that a lot of fans are going to get behind the more you get to know it. If you like Duke Williams, if you like the underdog story of Duke Williams, I don't understand why you wouldn't like the underdog story of Isaiah Hodgins. They're honestly almost the same guy to me. You know, Pierre just mentioned he could be the next David Nelson, maybe. You know, that's the thing. He's another guy who's going to have to come in, learn from Stephon Diggs, learn from John Brown. If he can't soak in that coaching, if he can't change some things about his game, he's going to be a one-trick pony like David Nelson was, just strictly a red zone guy, a very stiff, upright, you know, route runner. But just like I had a feeling with Duke Williams when he was making all those crazy plays in practice last year, like get this guy off the practice squad, get him into the game. Why is he on the inactive list every week? That same feeling I had last year about Duke Williams, I'm having that sort of off-season feeling about Isaiah Hodgins. Like, I want to see him in the game. I want to see I just want to see what this cat can do in the red zone. I just want to see it. I want a preseason game. I want first time we get in the red zone, even if it's with the ones. I want Isaiah McKenzie, like, you know, every time we're in the red zone. Dang it. I'll get it eventually. But every time we're in the red zone this preseason, I want to see one of those 2 guys at any point in the game. Just rotate them. First red zone series, Hodgins out there. Second red zone series, Duke Williams out there. I want them in there. I want to see what these guys can do in the red zone because that's where they're most important. You know, Beasley can get you some things on third down. Beasley's going to help you in the red zone as well. Allen and Beasley had a great connection in the red zone. But these 2 guys bring something that maybe only Dawson Knox can replicate. Maybe. So, you know, Dawson Knox seems more like a yak guy to me. But he did make some crazy contested catches. But, you know, whether it's Fromm or Barkley or Allen, whenever we're in the red zone, I want to see those 2 guys. I want to see what they got. And my money is on the guy who's invested the draft capital in, and that's Isaiah Hodgins. All right. That brings us, ladies and gents, to our last. Oh, actually, we got a couple more questions. But the next question is, sorry, we're struggling here. Here's the last question. If we were to only keep 6 wide receivers, the last 2, we were imagining a scenario where there were 7 guys. If we were to keep only 6 wide receivers, that 6 wide receiver spot, considering Davis, Roberts, and the big 3 are locks, do you want the size contested catch guy or do you want the speed gadget guy? Who are you going for? Is it the McKenzie or the Foster, or is it the Hodgins or the Williams? Who do you want? What trait do you want with that last roster spot? Do you want the size that cuts the catch, or do you want the speed gadget?
I want Hodgins as the last guy. Mm-hmm. So if we're keeping 6, I would want it to be Diggs, Brown, Beasley, Roberts, Davis, and Hodgins, because I do think that rounds out the group a little bit more than what you would have if you had the McKenzie, right? Because I feel like, you know, I think Hodgins can do a little bit of everything. Diggs can do a little bit of everything. Brown's obviously shown what he can do deep and, you know, in the intermediate. Beasley, for, you know, as being a slot guy, has shown that he can work in the red zone as well. And, you know, Roberts is going to be the return man. So to me, again, it gets back to kind of what you just said. If I'm keeping 6 and I'm going down to the bottom of the roster there, and it comes down to like a Hodgins or a McKenzie, I'm probably keeping Hodgins, right? Now, some people will say, well, keep McKenzie and see if you can stash Hodgins on your practice squad. But to be honest with you, I don't think that if you cut Hodgins, I don't think that there's a very high likelihood that he's going to sneak through waivers and you're going to be able to add him to your practice squad. I just feel like he's a guy that someone's going to pick up. He's probably a, you know, consensus top 20 wide receiver in this draft class, maybe top 25. Okay. Top 25, I'll say. And so I'm keeping Hodgins because I think the ceiling again there for him is higher, and you spouted out what he could do in the red zone. So I like that, you know, I like those possibilities probably more than I would like a gadget guy.
All right. So I'm totally with you there too. It's tough because I know there's a lot of Isaiah McKenzie lovers out there, but I'm just even if it's either or, Duke, I would take, if I'm Brandon Beane and I'm sitting in a room and I'm with Sean McDermott and, you know, we get down to the nitty gritty and we talk about special teams and they're like, guys, we can only keep 6. We can, that's all we can afford. We can only keep 6 wide receivers on this roster, after the conversation is decided that Andre Roberts has to be kept, obviously there are 4 locks. As much as I love Isaiah McKenzie, I'm taking whether it's Duke Williams or Isaiah Hodgins, whatever the coaching staff decides, that's what I'm going with. I do think that if it is, I'm with you. I would go Isaiah Hodgins because I think that you could probably get Duke Williams and Robert Foster on your practice squad. Last year, I was infuriated when we cut Duke Williams. I was angry. I think you remember me just screaming on this podcast. Like, what the hell are we doing? He's the only size receiver we have. I want that size. I want that size. I want that size. Josh Allen proved in that wild card game in Houston that he's capable of making those throws to the contested catch wide receivers. He's capable of putting those dimes out there in the red zone, throwing up that 50-50 ball. He can do it. So why weren't we doing it sooner? Like, those were things that infuriated me last year. So give me that size any day of the week. Give me Hodgins because I think you can fit Duke Williams and Robert Foster on your practice squad. Robert Foster, again, was invisible last year. Now, teams look at things more closely than we do. Teams might have seen how good, Robert Foster was on special teams last year and aren't as deep at wide receiver as we are and are going to snatch him up in a second. Maybe not. It's worth a shot. Bring Robert Foster back on your practice squad if you can. Duke Williams, I thought he was gone. He had a really good preseason, like an electric preseason. He did. I thought he was gone when we cut him. We got him back. It shocked me. It astonished me. It's one of those things that I just don't understand. From a fan perspective, I don't understand how an NFL GM didn't see that he was an NFL caliber player. But it happened. Can it happen 2 years in a row? He's still practice squad eligible. These new rules, guys can come back and forth without being subjected to waivers. They can do it up to 2, 3, 4 times. I'm not even sure of the exact number. But so the Bills can sort of keep Hodgins and have Foster and Duke Williams in the back burner, or if Foster leaves, go find another speed guy. If Williams gets swooped up, go find another size guy, find a prospect. They also have a guy I like in Nick Easley sitting in the wings. He's more of a slot guy, a guy I think they're grooming in, the scenario where as Cole Beasley gets phased out, maybe Nick Easley can come in and compete in the slot. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm definitely going with Isaiah Hodgins as well. Give me that size over the speed and contested catch any day of the week. Sean says, Judge Mathis, it's because of his ceiling. I'm with you. I think a lot of people are saying that, he wasn't drafted for a reason. It wasn't just his personal and character concerns. He had a really bad combine. So athletically, he is a little restrained. So maybe Duke Williams, his spot on the roster could be a sort of like Trey Burton flex tight end. So that brings us to our last segment here. This is something that we do at the end of every podcast. It's called our Jabroni of the Week. And, a Jabroni is somebody who sort of, acts a fool, does something foolish, does something stupid, says something stupid. So every week we like to highlight something a little comical or something that infuriates us. People are going to get to know real quick that some things really work me up. I'm known for my rants. I don't have a rant in me this week, but I do have a couple Jabronis of the week. But let's start with you, Dave. Who is your Jabroni of the week this week?
Yeah, so my Jabroni of the week this week is more of like an entity. It's all the collective sort of Bills fans that are clamoring to cut Ed Oliver because he had this incident, right? So I just, like we said at the beginning of the show, it's overreaction. The guy was the first round pick. He's gonna learn. He's young. Like you said, no one got hurt. So ultimately, thankfully, that didn't happen. The people saying to cut Ed Oliver, I think it's just like knee-jerk reaction. So I'm going to tell you right now, like, my Jabroni of the week is the entity of, and it's not just Bills fans. I'm sure there's non-Bills fans saying this too, but the entity of the people out there on social media and the like, kind of saying cut Ed Oliver because of this incident. It's dumbfounded. It's not a good, it's not really like a good take. I don't think so. To me, that's my Jabroni of the week.
Yeah. Melvin Henry says, cut Yeldon, bring up Wade. Just let it go. Corey, I'm with you with Earl Thomas, but we're going to try to keep
that's a good one.
We're going to try to keep PC. So we're just going to let that one, we're going to let that one go. If anyone wants a good laugh though, feel free to just type in Earl Thomas into your Twitter search engine, read all the articles, and comedy will ensue. My Jabroni of the week, one of them is myself. So my first one is myself. I'm giving myself the Jabroni of the week because I cut a promo last week for the Bills Guys podcast. Went up on
Self-deprecating.
Twitter,
Nice.
went up on the Facebook. Got a little bit of a negative reaction where I said it's sort of. I sort of said that I think it's a little bit of a pipe dream for the Buffalo Bills to win 12 games this season. I said that they have a tough record in improved division, not in a sense where Brady's gone, but in a sense where the Jets are better, the Dolphins are better, the Broncos are better. A lot of teams that we played last year, all of these things is. I just think we have a really, really good. We have a really, really tough schedule this year, and I think it's going to be hard to win 12 games. That doesn't mean I think the Buffalo Bills are a bad football team. I still think it's going to be an immense disappointment if we do not make the playoffs. I think it is going to be an immense disappointment if we don't win the division. Tom Brady is gone. Ding dong, the witch is dead. Just because Bill Belichick is here, their quarterback is Jared friggin' Stidham. So if we can't win a division where Sam Darnold is still standing behind an all backup offensive line, and Ryan Fitzpatrick and Tua are duking it out in Miami against another offensive line that's not great, and Jared friggin' Stidham is a starting quarterback in New England. If we can't win the division, when will we ever win the division? So yeah, our schedule is tough. Yeah, I think it's tough. We're going to win. I think it's tough. 12 wins, as Daniel Gowrie says, is doable. I think it is doable. But I don't think that, even though it's doable, anything's doable. We can go 16-0. 16-0 is doable too. Take it one game at a time. There's no team on our schedule that scares the hell out of me that I think on any given Sunday we can't beat. But an NFL schedule is grueling. You're playing 16 games in 17 weeks, 4 trips to the West Coast.
And only, and we mentioned it last week, you only get back-to-back home games once during the entire schedule. So it's kind of tough.
It's a tough schedule. And there's nothing wrong with saying the Buffalo Bills are a very good football team. The Buffalo Bills are division winners. I didn't cut the promo correctly. That's why I'm the division. That's why I'm the Jabroni of the week here, because I cut that promo terribly. It made me sound like such negative Nancy. I still think the Bills should be favorites and should be expected to win this division. Playoffs are a must. I just struggle to find 12 wins when I'm mocking my schedule, my very early schedule predictions. My other Jabroni of the week, this is a guy who continues to, he's the new Skip Bayless in my book, another guy at Fox Sports. Nick Wright posted his AFC East predictions for the season. He had New England going 10-6 and winning the division. He had Miami going 9-7 and getting the wild card, which I like Miami, but we're in this weird epidemic where, it's not as much practice time. They're completely overhauling their roster like we did a season before. It's going to be tough for them to get up to speed. So he's got New England winning 10 games. He's got Miami winning 9-7, going 9-7, getting the wild card berth. He's got the Buffalo Bills going 8-8. And then he's got the Jets winning 5 or 6 games. I don't know what it was. But I mean, come on, Nick Wright. That take is worse than your hair plugs. It is awful. Jarrett Stidham. You think Jarrett Stidham against the schedule that I just said I struggle seeing the Bills winning 12 games against, playing San Francisco, playing Kansas City, having to play Buffalo's defense, having to go up against the Jets who are improved, having to go up against the Dolphins who are improved. Brian Flores knows Bill Belichick, and Brian Flores has got some talent on that defense. Having to go up against the number 1 seeds from last year in the 2 sort of odd games, up against that schedule. The New England, who's actually, I think, has the toughest schedule in the league.
They do. By strength of schedule percentage points, they have the hardest schedule in the NFL. Yeah.
Nick Wright, you think Jarrett Stidham or Brian Hoyer is going to win 10 games? I love Bill Belichick as much as the next guy. I still think they have some talent on that defense. 10 freaking games winning the division. Are you kidding me, Nick Wright? That's Jabroni of the week territory right there.
Nice one. That's really strong. That's strong.
Me. As you can see, people can now see that I do, in fact, get pretty worked up. We got a comment here. Rich G, I really appreciate it. You said great content, Buffalo Fanatics. Let's go Buffalo. Where's Rico tonight? Rico, he needs a break. Rico will still be here. We will be here every Monday night, and we will be here every Thursday night. Rico will still be in his post-game slot. Sundays he'll still be doing a preview show during the regular season. And Rico will always be here with breaking news. He was here last night with the Ed Oliver news. So Rico's still around, Pierre's still around, everyone's still around. We're just adding more great content here to the Buffalo Fanatics YouTube channel, Facebook, all the good stuff. So thank you. We really appreciate it. Rich, one thing we failed to mention earlier in the show, Rich, you are now officially a super chatter. which means next week, you see this little scroll at the bottom that says Jabroni of the Week? You're not the Jabroni of the Week, Rich. You're actually, we're very thankful for you. You're the opposite of the Jabroni of the Week. But your name will be on that bottom ticker next week. Every week, if you're a super chatter, if you are a super chatter, you're going to be a member of an exclusive club at this bottom ticker. I believe Rico is going to be doing the same thing. We're going to give you the shout outs you guys deserve for supporting us in the Buffalo Fanatics community. So, Rich, send us your Twitter handle. Send us whatever sort of thing you want to promote, your name. So we'll put it in that bottom scroll there, and we'll get your name and your Twitter handle or whatever platform you're on. We'll get it shared with the Bills Mafia community so you can grow your following and you can communicate with Bills fans everywhere. I know one of my favorite things about Buffalo Fanatics is all the new followers. Not because I want the internet clout or anything. It's because, I've mentioned this on shows previous. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. You live in Cary, North Carolina. We are transplanted Bills fans. And the more Bills fans that follow us, the more Bills fans that we follow, the more people we get to communicate with, the more perspectives we get to listen to, the more we get to grow and become better as Bills fans and more informed as Bills fans. We learn just as much from you guys. We have had great comments, and our show is better because of this comment section than it would have been if it was just the two of us recording this episode. So we really appreciate you guys. Before we go, we went about 15 minutes longer than I expected, but we'll stay on a little bit longer. If you guys have any questions for us, shoot the questions in the comment section. If there are no questions in the next couple of minutes, we'll head out. But yeah, this has been fun. I think we didn't embarrass ourselves too bad, Dave. How about yourself?
I mean, other than you calling Isaiah Hodgins, Isaiah McKenzie about 10 times, that's probably the worst of it, I would say. And then I'm gonna get flamed for the supposed Duke Williams hate, but we really don't hate Duke Williams here. So yeah, I'll just echo that. Like, super thankful, one, for the opportunity that Fanatics gave us, right? I mean, we've kind of been evolving the way we've done our show. We've done some different formats. We added Jabroni of the Week, and now we're kind of doing this new thing. So it's a learning experience for us as well, right? This is our first time doing this. And I think, just like when we started out the podcast, you go back and listen to our first couple shows. I mean, it's tough. We didn't know each other. We didn't meet. So it was like just this kind of natural development. And I think we'll have that same thing on here. So I'm looking forward to this format also just getting better and better as well. Vermin XX asked a great question. He said, where can I rewatch? It'll be available to rewatch on Facebook, on Periscope, and on YouTube. So it'll be available to rewatch. And if you want to listen to it, like on your ride to work or whatever, this recording will be audio only on the Buffalo Fanatics Podcasting Network. It'll go up right after the show, and it'll be available to you for tomorrow morning. So you can rewatch it on any of the platforms we live streamed on, and you can listen on any of the on the Buffalo Fanatics Podcasting Network, along with all the other great podcasts we have. So check it out. Thank you. We appreciate that. So unless there's any other questions, we appreciate it, guys. Before we go, I'm going to roll through the banners here because I'm having some fun with it. We got the banners here. I'm learning some new things. Let's go through it. I'm gonna make my Sean McProcess shirt here, kind of my regular shtick here.
You're trusting that process. You got the pecs for it. I don't know the pecs for that.
I mean, I feel like if I shave my head and just got the hat that he wears, I could probably pull that look off.
You think he nares his head, or you think it's just naturally bald?
No, he does something to that. That's not natural.
I know Dino Babbers, the head coach of Syracuse, nares his face. Nares it. That must be painful. BuffaloFanatics.com. Adam Nini, our editor-in-chief, does a great job. We have a ton of great writers. Mitch Brodeur, you every Tuesday, myself, not humble brag here, Casey Reed. I can't even see the comment section now. I see you giggling, so feel free to read the comments.
Stephen Campione just laughed at me calling this the McProcess shirt, which is
So the BuffaloFanatics.com, we got some great articles for you. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot of Bills news everywhere. And one of the things that we're going to start doing on the Buffalo Fanatics blog, Casey's in charge of it, formerly of the Judge and Reed show, rest in peace, one episode on YouTube Live. But he does a great job with this. He literally just spends his whole day scrolling Twitter, scrolling Facebook, scrolling the newswire, finds all of the interviews, finds all the cool videos, all of those things, all of the stories of the day, and he throws it up on the blog. He does 4 or 5 posts a day. So if you're one of those people who are lazy and want people to do the work for you, head over to thebuffalofanatics.com. All of the stories that you want to know, even if they're not stories from us, even if they're from other outlets, like Bleacher Report and things like that, they get reshared and sort of packaged by Casey on the Buffalo Fanatics blog. Great place to go. And as always, follow the Buffalo Fanatics on Twitter. It's BUFF Fanatics on Twitter. We always got some great stuff on there. I have partial control of the handle, and I can get pretty crazy sometimes. So head over there to Twitter, Instagram. The biggest issue people make, because this is our most popular thing, I think. Bobby does a great job over on Instagram. The Buffalo Fanatics. It's not Buffalo Fanatics, it's the Buffalo Fanatics. So head over to the Instagram. The Instagram is awesome.
It's awesome.
I think
love it.
I can't tell you how many hours I've lost just scrolling through the Instagram stories. Even before we were part of Buffalo Fanatics, I did it. And then, as always, Flick Chat with BF.com, BFFanshop.com. 10% off if you use the promo code Bills, guys. So if you're looking for a Mr. Process shirt, or if you're looking for a You Dig shirt, anything in the BF Fan Shop, 10% off on us. Just type in the promo code The Bills Guys. Follow us on Twitter at The Bills Guys. And unless there's any questions in the comments section, I think we just have just about done it for today. This has been fun. We really appreciate you guys for watching. We will be back on Thursday. The topic of the show will be the secondary. So today we talked about wide receivers. On Thursday, we'll be talking about the secondary. So we should have some fun. Thank you guys so much. Till next time, go Bills.
Go Bills.